And the cat.
And the cat.
Yeah.
This is a poem called Sea Fever, and the writer is John Masefield. There are 3 verses. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. That's it. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Sorry. Your accent is so suitable to that poem. That's another thing, because I've never quite got to the bottom of how you have ended up with your accent. But
I think it's a mix. There's definitely a family, southwestern, like Bristol.
Yes.
You know, family connection with Bristol, and then when I lived in Bristol, that got much stronger because I was hearing the Bristol accent every day. But there's also, I think there's also a few more, like few more places that I've lived have left little bits.
Yes.
So you know, we as a family we didn't live in Bristol. As a family, we moved from Cambridge to London.
Yeah.
So it's ended up like.
Do you know where John Masefield was?
I don't.
From when he was, which he must have lived somewhere on the coast, actually.
I don't. I haven't.
We'll have to investigate.
That would be something that it'd be interesting to find out more about him, because ever since I, you know, like I said at the time, I saw the poem, the second verse of the poem, on the side of a beach hut. It had been painted onto the side of a beach hut, and I kept thinking about it. And I liked the fact that, I obviously admired the fact that somebody had gone to all that trouble, but also thinking that poem sounds familiar. I'm sure I've heard that poem before.
Yeah, yes.
There you go.
I certainly heard it as well. Okay, well, I'm going to end the extra recording session.
Okay, cool.
Well done, Fizz. That was fantastic.
The sky and the sea are never quite the same, but there's a familiarity of just walking along the same promenade and such like.
Yeah.
And I quite like the mixture of the wildness of it, of the ocean and the wind and such like. But I also like the fact there's a civilizing factor. There's a promenade. There's an RNLI station.
Oh yes, the RNLI station. They're brilliant, aren't they?
I don't like completely wild landscapes where there's no hint of civilization. I quite like the idea that there are people around and there's a structure of civilization nearby. So it just suits me perfectly.
There's a good cafe or a pub.
A pub and a chippy.
Oh, and that's another thing. Staying here for longer. Having stayed here for longer, I've noticed much more about the bossiness of the oyster.
Yeah.
But yes, I've always wanted to live by the sea, and I have managed to do that several times, and I intend to do that again in the future. That is my plan. And just what Roger was saying is that combination of familiarity and difference You can be, you can get to know the tides, but there's a storm and then you get a stormy sea. And there's something for me about the combination of the motion and the sounds of the sea that I find very calming and very relaxing.
I do too, but I think Tony finds it melancholy, and it sort of spooks him a bit, especially in winter.
I like seaside. It's really,
yeah.
I wouldn't say no. I'd have to pick my place to stay. I mean, what I like about that poem, and what there's this absolute authenticity about that yearning sense, that especially about the sea. If you have it, there's these programs. I don't know if you've ever seen them, the Trawlermen. They're absolutely fascinating. I mean, talk about hard work. And the sea, you wouldn't believe some of the seas that they're fishing in, and it would frighten me to death. I mean, there are various iterations of these programs. Sometimes you have a celebrity, a couple of celebrities go out, sort of name people, see if they can hack it as a trawler person, and they often do, but at what cost? They really do have to search themselves. And yet all of them, to a person, says it's their life for them. They would miss it. They can't think about anything else about it. And if you're into that, you can understand that if you're away from the sea and that is your life, that's part of your being, and that poem, I think, really gets to. Yeah,
so he's got to have his fix of the sea.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
It's like when you're not there.
By the way, I've decided rather belatedly, and I might just miss some of them. So I might get you to do that again at the end. I'm recording this session, right? So it's going up into the cloud, so we can show it to anybody that we wish. Okay, all right. Shall we move on then? Okay, Robert. I think it's over to you. So you say that you. Yeah, but get a little bit nearer or put up your microphone.
I wanted to say that poem, one thing that is one reason why it's so beguiling, John Mansfield's poem, is the sound of it. Is that it is like a kind of a wave. If you read it out, it's sort of that sibilance that is almost like this constant wave across shingle, and that's why there's so much sibilance in it. And it is very, very clever. It's sort of on that sort of subliminal level. Beautiful poem, that one.
And I thought, Pizzy, you read it very well, because you read it with that. You'd really found the meter and the rhythm in that poem.
Yes,
and that came across. And I always think that if you're ever reading a poem or doing Shakespeare or something, there are some actors who can just read something or act something and make you understand it.
That's a real skill, isn't it?
Because sometimes Shakespeare, I always think, it takes a while till you get into it. But Simon Russell Beale, for example, he can read anything.
He's great,
And it's clarity, and I thought that came really through on your reading there. Okay, Robert, what's over to you?
Thanks for setting it up like that, because you're not going to get clarity from me.
Poor Robert.
Especially as I'm going for...
What brothers do to each other.
Thank you. Well, I'm going for what is a favourite poem from school days when Tony and I were studying S-level English, and we had to move off away from our A-level texts, and we were studying then Restoration poetry as part of A-level. And there was as you probably know, prior to the Restoration poets, there were the metaphysical poets, John Donne, Andrew Marvell, people like that. And wanted to sort of branch out into that end of the poetry spectrum, and found this poem. It's a very well-known one in its context. You may have heard of it. It's Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress.
Oh yeah, that's really
yes, yes.
And the reason I always loved it, because I understood through the help of our English teacher, what it was about. I mean, on its surface, it's a pretty randy, horny guy trying to get into bed or bed his mistress, and she's resisting. But what eventually it opens out into is almost a perennial theme of many of the metaphysical poets, which is, to use that Latin phrase, carpe diem, seize the day. Yeah. And that's really what sits behind this poem. So, To His Coy Mistress, Andrew Marvell. Had we but world enough and time, this coyness, lady, were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou, by the Indian Ganges side, should rude be spied. I, by the tide of Humber, would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow faster than empires, and more slow. 100 years would go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall found my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honour turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than language in his slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run.
Lovely.
Isn't that
well read? Well read, Robert. That was very nice. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah,
I like that.
I love that, those phrases of, well, obviously the famous one, the time's winged chariot hurrying.
Yeah. Is that where the time's winged chariot comes from?
That's the phrase.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
And the grave's a fine and private place, but none there, I think, do their embrace. It's witty, but it's also absolutely poignant. So it's behind all. I mean, it's a very heterosexual poem on its surface, and I'm not. But the fact is, it's
universal, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stirred.
Well, I thought that was really nice poem. I mean, and nicely read as well.
Yeah, it's very well read.
Yes.
Yeah.
What when I come back to read the poem I'm going to read, the ones that I thought to read, and that one has this theme, and I'd be interested to see if this emerges in any of our other choices. Is that sense of time. I've so many of the most poignant poems is about a time they're looking back, either nostalgically or about something about the future, about their mortality, and that's a thing that I find when you get a bit older, you realise that there is that time click, what's it, ticking away, isn't it? There's that sands of time ticking off, and I find that quite poignant, and that emerges very much as the heart of that poem as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, well, you know, had he had world enough at time, this
it's also about impatience.
You've got to move, you know, you've got to, the present is important, really.
Yeah, it's also about impatience, isn't it? It's like
yes.
I want you, and I want you now. I don't want any delays.
Yeah. I suppose in those days, you know, life was probably a bit more brutish and short than it is now.
To quote him.
I think there were probably still class differences in that.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay, Sherbs. So, what one have you got for
I don't really want to read my poem. I want the poet to read it. Can I play the poet reading it?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, if you go for it.
What you like?
You've got the
technical
ability to do that.
If your technology fails, it's back. You'll have to read it, Sherbs. But go on, let us over to you.
You could always mime it. You could always mime it.
Yeah.
The blackberries would ripen. At first, just one, a glossy purple clot, among others, red, green, hard as a knot. You ate that first one, and its flesh was sweet like thickened wine. Summer's blood was in it, leaving stains upon the tongue and lust for picking. Then red ones inked up, and that hunger sent us out with milk cans, pea tins, jam pots, where briars scratched and wet grass bleached our boots. Round hay fields, cornfields, and potato drills, we trekked and picked until the cans were full, until the tinkling bottom had been covered with green wool, and on top, big dark blobs burned like a plate of eyes. Our hands were peppered with thorn pricks, our palms sticky as bluebeards. We hoarded the fresh berries in the byre, but when the bath was filled, we found a fur, a rat-grey fungus glutting on our cash. The juice was stinking too. Once off the bush, the fruit fermented. The sweet flesh would turn sour. I always felt like crying. It wasn't fair that all the lovely canfuls smelt of rot. Each year, I hoped they'd keep, knew they would not.
That's called Blackberry Picking. It's by a poet called Seamus Heaney. Let me just
It's the same theme, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nostalgia, yeah.
I chose that partly for the boys.
I think you could also say that the moral of the story is pick your blackberries and eat them right now.
Yeah.
Don't try and keep them. Just eat them.
What were the two last lines? I didn't catch them.
Elaine?
The two last lines, hang on.
Yeah.
No, ended with rot, but I couldn't.
Blackberry picking. Yeah.
Once off the bush, the fruit fermented, the sweet flesh would turn sour. I always felt like crying, it wasn't fair, that all the lovely canfuls smelt of rot. Each year I hoped they'd keep, knew they would not.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, very similar, really, in many respects. Well, certainly lots of the same theme.
He's a poet that I've only fairly recently discovered. I think I might have read a bit of his stuff when I was doing A-levels, actually.
Have you read Beowulf, Elaine?
Well, I met Beowulf.
Beowulf.
Have you read it?
No, never.
No, because that's really
Brilliant.
good. Yeah.
And his translation is just amazing, isn't it?
Really amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a good story anyway, but...
Yeah. It's a fantastic story.
So whose translation?
But his translation and the way he speaks it is just beautiful.
Really
I love
nice,
his voice.
Well, he narrates Beowulf, does he, in a translation?
Seamus Heaney.
He translated it. Yeah.
I shall go research that.
If you look at it on YouTube, it's about, I think it's about half an hour.
Yeah, something like that.
I read the book and then I saw it on YouTube, and to hear him recite it is just amazing. And he, because he's a poet, he translates it in a slightly different way, I think, to people who are perhaps more expert in the language. He gives it a poetry.
He gives it a music, doesn't he, really?
He does. It's
an epic poem, so it needs to be an epic poem in the translation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've never read it.
He wrote that translation, or the year after, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
That's right.
Right.
Did you ever go blackberry picking when you were kids?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, lots.
It's one of the sharpest.
I don't remember ever keeping any, though.
No.
I ate them.
We did. We collected them.
Or make part.
They are a fruit that just disappears. It goes rotten very quickly. But
yeah.
No, I remember.
Funny enough, our Irish
mum.
It's one of our Robert and I absolute memories of the delight of going over to what we called the local ranges, army ranges, for the blackberry briars, and collecting tons and tons of blackberries in September. And Mum would then make these beautiful blackberry pies, and we love it. That's one of our
lovely. Yeah.
memories. And that poem is so beautiful.
I remember going blackberrying in various different places, including on Wimbledon Common, and eating as many as I wanted, and then putting some in there.
We went over to Wimbledon Common, and we couldn't believe that. Of course, they're not out, but it's a fantastic place to go blackberry picking, isn't it? We should do that then, if we're allowed to.
Kids used to make blackberry crumble. My kids
my mum made blackberry crumble and apple and blackberry crumble.
That's right. Apple and blackberry was the favourite.
Yeah.
Had a couple of apple trees in the garden.
It is my favourite berry, I think.
Yes.
Same here, but there's no point buying it.
Bilberries are lovely, but then it takes a very long time to pick them.
I don't know because Rog and Felicity. Do you remember we did that barge trip in France?
Oh yes.
And, we discovered, I discovered that they do this in France. You can't ever get it over in the UK. I think it's called Mûre Sauvage, wild blackberries, and it is heavenly. It's packed with flavour, and that's the other thing, going on the hunt for wild blackberry jam in France.
So the different fruits then, a different sort of variety.
I don't know. I think I don't know, but the if you can get it, French wild blackberry. I don't know, as opposed to presumably cultivated blackberry on blackberry farms. I don't know, but wild blackberry.
It's exactly the same jam that Mum used to make.
It is, yeah.
Except that we can never find it now.
We can never find it. No.
We used to, and maybe we don't look hard enough. But it wasn't a different taste. It was just that memory of being that good.
It is probably.
Mum used to make that jam, and it was absolutely. And that's about the only way you can keep them.
The
preserve.
Yeah.
What? Did you want to say anything else about the poem, Lily?
No, I just thought it was a nice poem, and I did partly choose it for the boys.
Yes. On the basis it's gone male, female, female. Sorry, male, female, female, male, female. We'll have Roger next.
Yes.
And then we'll.
Does Roger know his name?
I can do a poem that's 3 lines long.
Yeah. Crack on with it.
Do it.
I don't want to overstretch myself or anything.
Savour it. Do it over the hour.
It's a haiku. It's a haiku.
Not Stevie Smith, is it? Nigel?
No, it's not.
Aloft in the loft sits Croft. He is soft. That's a saying.
I've got that one beat. Before you were going to do yours, Nigel, I've got this book here, and I'd recommend it. It's Giles Brandreth.
Oh yeah,
dancing. It's great, and I love
Roger's
this one.
Back.
This is
sneaking into shot here.
Hey, here he is.
We're doing short poems. We're fitting a couple in, but this is a great. This is the book. I think you had this, Rog. Don't you? Is that the Giles?
What it was John dance. Oh, hang on, they both got it. Dancing in the Light of the Moon.
It's such a brilliant book.
It is a brilliant book.
And what is it? Is it poems that are really nice?
What is it?
It's an anthology of poems that he selected. A lot of them are well known, and a little bit of write-ups between hand and little
nice, yeah.
And it's just a lovely collection.
It's fantastic, and he name drops all the time, doesn't he? He's such a funny bloke. But the poems in there are so brilliant, and the Seamus Heaney one that you've just broadcast, was in that. And
oh, was it? Right. Okay.
Right.
And I've been reading poems to Helen for a while, and that was when I did probably like about 2 months ago. It's such a beautiful poem.
Yes, yes. You can always
book,
taste them, can't you?
Yeah.
Can I show you another anthology?
Oh, God.
That.
Well,
poems that
lift it up a bit. Lift it up.
Up.
Poems in the. What does
I've
it?
never seen that before.
Show it again, Robert.
Poems that make grown men cry.
It's somebody's collected all these well-known people. Anybody from Sebastian Faulks, Al Jacobson, Alexander McCall Smith, Clive James, David Hare, Frank Kermode, Colm Tobin, massive number of them, and they all have to select one poem that they can
cry. That's a difficult, yeah.
It's very interesting, and there's now a companion volume, Poems That Make Grown Women Cry. I haven't got it yet.
I've got to say, Clive James, I've never really, rated him too highly because I don't really watch TV. But I've seen him like every now and again. He seemed like quite a funny raconteur and that. But a few years ago, I started reading his poems, and they are amazing. He's a brilliant poet. Yes. I couldn't believe this bloke who I didn't even like him. He used to do some things about Japanese TV shows or something, and I used to thought there's a really unpleasant undercurrent to the bloke.
Yeah.
Really?
I started reading his poems, and they are absolutely beautiful. Fantastic, And
his last ones were written when he's had.
What were you going to say, Nige?
They're very elegiac and beautiful.
I love Clive James.
Oh yeah. Did you read his poems, or is it just his TV stuff that you enjoyed?
I did enjoy his TV stuff. Must admit.
So I don't really watch TV, so
I don't. I'm not worried. I haven't watched it.
I think that his TV stuff, there was that period, quite a long period actually, where he went into exactly that sort of thing about Japanese game shows, and I think that didn't do him any favours, particularly, although he had some interesting, witty insights. But before that, and then afterwards, I think he was a heavyweight in terms of his literacy and his depth of knowledge. And,
he seemed like a really funny bloke whenever I saw him interviewed, and he was obviously so much more intelligent than the sort of persona he had on that TV show. As I said, I didn't really watch it, and I saw excerpts every now and again.
Yeah,
but beautiful poetry. Yeah.
Now, just as you were out, Rog, Nige said I was going through the running order. You were going to be next before the break, but Nige said to fill the gap, he had a very short poem and 3 lines, so we all started to think about it. So it's over to Nige for his 3-line poem, and then it's over to you, Rog. Go on then, Nige.
I hope I'm not overstretching myself here. This is Spike Milligan, obviously, I thought I saw Jesus on a tram. I said, "Are you Jesus?" He says, "Yes, I am."
Brilliant. I love it.
I like that.
Yeah, I've never heard that one.
No, I haven't heard that.
I saw a photograph of his gravestone a little while ago because he was of Irish.
I told you
descent.
I was ill.
That's it.
Yes.
Irish.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic epitaph to have.
Yeah,
What a
there's
man.
that one about...
That was the title of a novel, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I think it might have been, yeah. But there's the one, there's the
Tolstoy?
one, there's the one, my
A Russian
happily...
novelist? Not
The
related
Russian-
to a Siberian cat, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it was a might have been Tolstoy, might have been someone else.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Actually, he did have that.
I'm sorry, I broke into the story there, Roger. Just I suddenly
That's all right.
remembered it, and I thought, I wonder.
But no, I've got that one beat in terms of number of lines.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Again, the Brandreth book. I would recommend it. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
okay.
this. Right. The lover writes a one-word poem from Gavin Hewitt, 1916 to 1995. So the title is "The Lover Writes a One-Word Poem." You.
Oh. That's rather nice, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
This book, which is
Oh,
called
right.
Home for every day of
Oh,
the
yeah.
year. Okay,
And-
I'll add it to the
I haven't
list.
seen that one. No.
It's edited by this woman, Ali Aziri, who I think must just have connections in family or something, because she's written really quite poor introductions to most of the poems. It's a very eclectic collection. Some of them are fantastic poems, of course, and then some of them are so poor, in my opinion. She just takes songs like from the Beatles and calls that a poem, and things like that. It's just really, really poor in some respects. But of course, every now and again, she picks on just classic poems that are really good. But the idea is a really lovely one. There's just a poem
Yeah, it is.
for every day of the year.
How did you acquire this book?
I was looking, funnily enough, it was next to this one, which I was looking for.
Ah, right.
And on the shelf next to it,
And you thought it was a nice
illustrated by
idea.
this.
Yeah. That's a lovely colour combination.
It is actually.
Yeah.
Was this book. And so I thought, oh, that's a really nice thing. Rather than just finding random poems to read, I've now got a year of poems. But some of them are just really disappointing.
So you've only got poems for some days of the year.
Well,
So you have to
basically,
find others for
I
other
just-
days,
I
right?
just read them. I
compile
read
your
every
own.
one, and then I just
Pick your
follow it up. Funnily enough, not only with this book, because I think Giles Brandreth, I think his collection is just brilliant.
I'm definitely going to get that one. That looks really good.
Yeah, Clive James, or just recently,
Oh, I wish I'd looked after my teeth.
what I couldn't believe is I heard Pam Ayres being interviewed. She's a much more rounded person than I realised.
She is, isn't she? Yes.
Yes.
Very, very interesting woman. And she
Brilliant.
said that John Cooper Clarke was inspired by her. And I heard John Cooper Clarke talk about that later.
Really, yeah.
That her poetry inspired his love of poetry and his love of wordplay and such like. Also, that idea of dealing with the ordinary and turning it into something slightly extraordinary.
Yes,
So
yes.
Yeah.
I've never really read Pam Ayres, being a bit of a snob in my own way. I remember she did a song about have you got a light boy? Do you remember that? Some song about a smoker. And that's about as much as I remember of Pam Ayres. But I've been really enjoying that. So there's my books. But this book, I can't really recommend it because there's so many duff poems. But the poem I've chosen is Robert Browning's Home Thoughts from Abroad.
Oh, lovely.
yes, yes.
And
Very nice.
it just fits today. So, Ode to Being
Scottish accent.
Now that April's there. And whoever wakes in England sees some morning unaware that the lowest boughs and the brushwood sheaf round the elm tree hole are in tiny leaf, while the chaffinch sings in the orchard bough, in England now. And after April, when May follows, and the whitethroat builds and all the swallows, hark, where my blossomed pear tree in the hedge leans to the field and scatters on the clover blossoms and dewdrops at the bent spray's edge. That's the wise thrush. He sings each song twice over, lest you should think he could never recapture the first fine, careless rapture. And though the fields look rough with hoary dew, all will be gay when noontide wakes anew. The buttercups, the little children's dower, far brighter than this gaudy melon flower. I just think, you know, that's
very nice. Yeah,
such a lovely
nice.
springtime poem.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What's the name of the poet again?
Browning.
Robert
Browning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Better than Wandering Lonely as a Cloud, isn't it?
No, well, that's different.
That was the famous revolutionary that wrote the poem about the daffodils.
Yeah.
And
he was. Yeah,
he was very, very much a revolutionary. Was what's his name?
Wordsworth.
Wordsworth.
Just became disillusioned.
Daft's man.
Yeah, but Browning, I thought it was a very nice poem and very spring-like.
It's really lovely, isn't it?
It was wonderful. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nicely.
What was the thing about the chaffinch? I think quite. It's sort of just read that bit where he talks about the chaffinch. Those last.
The chaffinch.
Yeah.
Let's just find it again.
Sings his song twice over.
As if he never could recapture his first fine careless rapture.
Oh yes, where the thrush.
I mean, it's a wonderful sentiment.
It's where the chaffinch sinks on the orchard's bough in England now. But there's that. I think what you meant was that beautiful bit. That's the wise thrush. He sings each song twice over, lest you should think he should never recapture the first fine, careless rapture.
You have to admire that ability to have the thought and then to put it to such poetry.
Yeah,
yeah, it's lovely.
And that it's really funny because I did think of having, you know, Shakespeare's sonnet about the darling buds of May and such like. And there's just some poets who can just capture in that minimalistic way, just in a few words, this incredibly evocative scene. And Browning does that, doesn't he, with that notion of the thrush singing in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well read, Rog. That was
Nice.
Very nice.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah. Weird.
Right, shall I play John
This
Clark,
also-
Nige?
Yes, go for it.
If I play it.
Yeah.
Which?
It's very rude.
Very rude. Okay.
Well, it's called Twat, yeah?
It's called Twat.
Twat.
Sure.
The clue's in the name, really.
Hang on.
Yeah. Well, I'm in an acrimonious frame of mind because of the dreadful hotels these promoters have been putting in. I'll do this one. I mean, you won't believe the hotels they're putting in, you know. I went to see the manager last night. I said, I come to see you about the roof. He said, what about it? I said, I want one. I said, I'll have pneumonia in the morning. He said, you'll have cornflakes like every... Right, this is well, the title appears on the very last line. Like a nightclub in the morning, you're the bitter end. Like a recently disinfected shithouse, you're clean round the bend. You give me the horrors. Too bad to be true. All of my tomorrows are lousy because of you. You put the shat in shatter. You put the pain in Spain. Your germs are splattered about. Your face is just a stain. You're certainly no raver. Commonly known as a drag. Do us all a favour. Here, wear this polythene bag. You're like a dose of scabies. I've got you under my skin. You make life a fairy tale. Grim, a sumo wrestler's armpits have nothing on your shoes. Show me any two half-wits and they're twice as smart as you. I think about thrombosis. Every time we touch, I say you have acute halitosis. You say thank you very much. You're very pleasant. I know it's just a fad. Your very presence makes me really mad. I hear your knock up on my door. I've got to get out of town. I hit the lights, I hit the floor, I turn the TV down. People mention murder. The moment you arrive, I'd consider killing you if I thought you were alive. You've got this slippery quality. It makes me think of phlegm and a dual personality. I hate both of them. Your bad breath, Vance disease, destruction, tooth decay. Please, 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 please take yourself away like a death at a birthday party. You have to spoil the fun like a sucked and spat out smarty. You're no use to anyone. Like the Black Widow spider in the recess of disgrace, speaking as an outsider. What do you think of the human race? You went to a progressive psychiatrist. He recommended suicide before scratching your bad name off his list and pointing away outside. Laughter from the playground breaks your bleeding heart. You're heading for a breakdown, better pull yourself apart. Your dirty name is passed about when something goes amiss. Your attitudes are platitudes, they make me want to piss. What kind of creature bore you? Was it some kind of bat? They can't find a good word for you, but I can. Swat.
Did you get
that? Was that a love poem?
I thought it was going to be the end. He's saying, "But I love you anyway."
Yes, I thought it might be.
No, not with John Cooper Clarke.
No.
I just love the line, speaking of an outsider, what do you think of the human race?
Yeah.
It's a great insult,
isn't it?
You want to talk about a Tory.
How old was he when he did that? He must have been quite a bit young. I mean,
well, he's quite old now, so he wasn't that young.
Yeah.
He was probably 30 when he hit the big time. So he was like 10 years older than all the punks. He used to introduce punk acts and be the first act on. I saw him a couple
it was a bit of sort of a grand old man sort of character.
Mm.
He is now, and he's gorgeous. Everyone, I'm really glad that he's so famous and popular now, because he wasn't back in the day.
He was going for years, and he was just kind of on the scene, on the punk scene, not making any money.
Yeah, I remember seeing him in the 70s, just arriving on stage in that really peculiar suit that he's always worn. He's not changed his style at all. And he just had like a carrier bag with books and bits of paper with his poems in, and he'd just root about in his carrier bag, and he'd go, "Oh no, that one's shit. Oh, that's rubbish. I'll try this one." It was just such a perfect act. And because he got quite badly addicted to heroin, didn't he, in the 80s? And it dropped out for a long time. And then he said that having that fantastic poem, I can't remember which one it was now, at the end of the Sopranos episode, or the series, I think it was, of Sopranos. And it's a fantastic track. It just goes, the fucking cops are fucking in, fucking this and fucking that. It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
Just a brilliant kind of idea of how miserable life is in Salford and Manchester. And it was just the perfect ending to the Sopranos episode, apparently. And it revitalised his career, he said.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
I think I sent that to Elaine and Tony. Evidently Chicken Town, it's called.
That's it, yes.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It will come flashing up on the screen very shortly, no doubt.
And it's quite short, so it doesn't go on for that long.
Same email,
have you got the link? Might as well play that one.
I think that's his best.
When did you send it to me, Nige?
When did you send it, Nige?
Maybe not.
You can find it.
Evidently Chicken Town, was it?
Maybe not. I'll send it later.
Yeah.
Is it a YouTube?
Yeah,
I'm sure it's on
Evidently
YouTube.
Chicken Town.
Bound to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's probably best to try and find a live recent
with
version.
him. Oh,
Yeah, definitely would need to hear it out loud. I don't think it. Yeah.
I'm so glad you picked that. That is such that's John Cooper like at his best. Just sat there and then he just reels it out. And I couldn't believe it. I saw him in the 70s. I bought in the 70s a couple of his books, which I've had stashed away because I just think he's got such a funny, poetic meter. You know, it's that fast delivery. It is punk.
It's almost like it's like rap before it was popular.
Well, I was going to say exactly that.
Right.
I was going to. Okay, Siobhan. So, should we? What's your?
Okay, so my poem is Tarantella by Hilaire Belloc, which was a poem that my dad used to. Well, he did, I don't think he actually knew it, but he knew bits of it, and he used to say it in the car. So I never knew what it was until I was older. Yeah. So, Tarantella. Do you remember an inn, Miranda? Do you remember an inn? And the tedding and the spreading of the straw for a bedding, and the fleas that tease in the high Pyrenees, and the wine that tasted of tar, and the cheers and the jeers of the young muleteers under the vine of the dark veranda. Do you remember an inn, Miranda? Do you remember an inn? And the cheers and the jeers of the young muleteers who hadn't got a penny and who weren't paying any, and the hammer at the doors and the din, and the hip-hop hap of the clap of the hands to the twirl and the swirl of the girl gone chancing, glancing, dancing, backing and advancing, snapping of a clapper to the spin out and in, and the ting-tong-tang of the guitar. Do you remember an inn, Miranda? Do you remember an inn? Nevermore, Miranda, nevermore. Only the high peaks hoar, and Aragon a torrent at the door. No sound in the walls of the halls where falls the tread of the feet of the dead to the ground. No sound, but the boom of the far waterfall, like doom.
It's so beautiful, isn't
it?
Yeah.
And it's actually the same theme.
Before.
Have you never heard it?
No, never.
No, I've never heard that one. No.
I've heard that, yes.
I have.
It's a beautiful.
Beautifully read.
Yeah,
It's
really nicely read.
Well done.
Thank you.
What do you know about Hilaire Belloc? He wrote. Was he with he wrote Matilda, didn't he? And
Matilda told such dreadful lies, it made one gasp and stretch one's eyes.
Was he French? Or was he?
No, I don't think he was. No. But how he got the French name, not too sure actually.
No.
Yeah, because he wrote all. I mean, that's the only serious poem I know of his. I think that everything else, just sort of clever doggerel, really. Which, really
very clever doggerel. I always thought.
I thought they're pretty funny. I mean.
Oh right, yeah. That's a beautiful poem. Absolutely
it's
beautiful.
Lovely, isn't it? Yeah, and it's the same theme about the passing of time and things not being the same when you get older. And apparently, I didn't know this before, but when I found it, just put the thing down for a minute. It says the Miranda of Hilaire Belloc's Tarantella is Miranda Mackintosh, whom Belloc met at an inn in the Pyrenean hamlet of Canrenc, on the River Aragon in 1909. So the poem was written 20 years later as a New Year's present to Miranda. So it's actually a long time after all those times with the the young muleteers and all that.
And he met. He was walking in the. Was it the Pyrenees? Did you say
it was an inn in the Pyrenees? Yeah, and it says the Tarantella is a dance for two that is supposed to be brought on by the intoxication induced by the sting of the tarantula, which is similar to that induced by falling in love. So I suppose that's all the dancing, the dancing in the inn. But
Wonderful.
It says here that Hilaire Belloc was a British-French writer, and
so he was French. Perhaps one of his parents was French, one British, was it, or perhaps? Yeah.
It just says British-French writer and historian, one of the most prolific writers in England during the early 20th century, and particularly famous for his cautionary tales.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. To read to errant children.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, apart from Matilda, what other ones did he write?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with most of them, or any of them.
There was a whole suite of them, but
yeah,
I've
in that book.
not studied them.
Yeah.
Look.
Because it was the gentle end of that sort of thing, wasn't it? Because there's all the German ones, which are really nasty, like Shock-Headed Peter and those sorts of things.
Yes, yes.
No, I mean,
yeah. So that
pretty nasty, some of them. Yeah, and
we
then
went to
the
see
one who
that.
cut the thumbs off, you know. Oh yes, we did, didn't we? Years.
We did,
and years
yeah.
ago.
And that was very good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. The kids still remember that.
Shock-Headed Peter, yeah.
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 Yeah. Max and Moritz,
And,
another one. Yeah.
In the Cooper Clarke poem, that.
Oh, here we go. French father and English mother. Born near Paris, but grew up in England in West Sussex. Died in Surrey, Guildford.
It's interesting because as you were reading that, I was thinking, this can't be a translation from French to English.
No.
Because just the words that are used are so important. You couldn't get a translation. Like
No,
that.
you couldn't get. I mean, tong tang. If it was like in French, it would be tang tong tang, and it wouldn't be.
Exactly. It wouldn't work. Yeah.
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 For my poem, I'll wait until Nigel comes. I'll read it. But I would like to. I'm going to take host privilege on this. In that I'm going to read one out, but I'd like to play maybe afterwards a rendition of Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas, which is a very favourite poem. It's increasingly become one of my favourite poems. Again, about this time thing, it could only have been written. He died, I think, when he was about 40 or something, a stupidly young age, but old enough to have written Fern Hill. He couldn't have written it in his younger years.
I don't know that one.
And you might do when you. And I was looking for the best rendition of it, and it's Anthony Hopkins. Of course, he's Welsh.
Oh, brilliant!
Might be Anthony Hopkins absolutely nails it. So I'll get the YouTube shortly and just have Anthony Hopkins read Fern Hill. And on that basis, I thought, well, I no way can do it justice compared to Anthony Hopkins. So I'm going to read something else. This is Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken.
That's nice.
Yes.
Yes, lovely poem.
So The Road Not Taken, Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller. Long I stood, and looked down as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I ever could come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
Lovely.
It's so beautiful.
Really nice.
So lovely. Yeah.
Well, I really like him. I think why everybody recognises the poem.
Oh yeah.
That you think it's about personal choice and destination. It's not simply about that. It's about the striving, really, about you face various choices. I've always wondered what would you? We all do this, don't you? At a certain period. What if I hadn't met Elaine? If I hadn't put that application in to Hammersmith Fulham late for the law centre, I wouldn't have been offered the job. I wouldn't have met Elaine. All of those things, and you make these decisions. You know, that poem that you read about Hilaire Belloc. If he hadn't gone to that inn, on that particular time, on that particular instant, to meet the person he's remembering 20 years later, it's important. But it's the idea of striving to make a difference. We all strive, I think, to make a difference. It's the importance is in the pursuit, not necessarily in the decisions, because they're just happenstance. You go down one road, you go down another.
What do you think he means by that he took the road less travelled? Because he at the beginning he says, you know, that they were, you know, they both had claims upon his. They both had claims to be chosen. But what do you think he meant when he said it was that he chose the road less travelled and that has made all the difference? I don't really know what he means by that.
I think, well, the first point at the beginning of the poem is basically says he's setting up a situation where he's had two choices and they have equal claims.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And then and at the end he says two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
Yeah,
I think the difference isn't so much in the choice and that he's achieved something and he's made the right choice.
Yeah.
The difference is simply, it's a difference by going down that road to what life would have been had he gone down a different road. He's not saying it's made a difference and it's a better choice. It's not judgmental. It's not qualitative.
Yeah. So is he saying that
life has been different because he chose one road rather than another?
No, I don't really agree with that. I think he chose, almost deliberately chose a less comfortable road.
Yes, I think that's what I would think.
Yeah, that's what I've always understood. It's a beautiful poem, and I've always thought it means that you've decided that you're not just going to go the way everybody else goes. You're going to do what you think is right, and you take the road less well travelled, i.e., perhaps less popular.
Yeah,
because you think that's right. You're doing what you think is right.
I think we're both about that, Tony. That's my take from anyway. But
it's such a beautiful poem, and I had a really long conversation with Rhiannon a couple of weeks ago, just saying, you're at a fork in your life. You know, you're just finishing university, and she's got all these ideas. She'd like to be in the music industry or photography and everything, and just talking to her about having these sort of dreams and these sort of ideas about the kind of job she wants to do. But also, she's going to have to make some decisions about just having a job that brings in enough money to pay the rent. And I want her to follow her dreams and to, you know, not have people rain on her parade.
Yeah.
But she's also got to realise that if she doesn't use her degree in the next 2 or 3 years, it becomes more difficult to get back into a more conventional kind of career and such like. And I just want her to realise she's at this point where she's going to have to make some decisions about where she goes and what she does. And it's just about thinking there is a road that's less well travelled. And I'd really like her to take that. But she has to understand, if she wants to try to make a career in music or photography and such like, it's a more difficult one than following a more, you know, traditional career path.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and it's funny, isn't it? Because all these poems are they're not quite nostalgic, but it's about thinking back in time.
It is, isn't it?
Where all these poems must reflect a certain emotional point in our lives. because I'm sure if we were all in our 20s, we'd have very different poems.
Yeah, that is really true.
I think that's definitely the case.
That's very, very true. Yeah, very true. Because Robert Frost, was it? I mean, when did he write it? Because, you know, he went to America, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was American. Yes, that's right. He was essentially regarded as an American. He went to America, I think, when he was adolescent, actually. Doesn't say when he wrote this. Let's have a look. He lived between 1874 and 1963.
Yeah.
So I guess it was.
Did he fight in the war, or did he avoid the war by going to America?
The first World War.
Yeah. What? How? 1890? Oh no.
I think he'd
have been 44 when the First World War broke out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think he was fought in the war.
No.
I think it. As I say, I think
1893. Did you say?
1893. I think he went to America when he was very young.
Well, the First World War began in 1914, so he'd be perfect fodder.
Because Edward Thomas did fight in the war, didn't he? And he was his friend. I think it was Edward Thomas.
Yeah.
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 Because it would have made a difference. That choice would have made a huge difference, wouldn't it? Really, to go to America at that time.
It would. Yes. Yeah.
Now as I was young and easy under the apple boughs about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb, golden in the heydays of his eyes, and honoured among wagons I was prince of the apple towns. And once below a time my lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns about the happy yard, and singing as the farm was home in the sun that is young once only, time let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden I was huntsman and herdsman, the calves sang to my horn, the foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running, it was lovely, the hay fields high as the house, the tunes from the chimneys, it was air and playing lovely and watery, and fire green as grass. And nightly under the simple stars as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I heard, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks, and the horses flashing into the dark. And then to awake, and the farm like a wanderer white, with dew come back, the cock on his shoulder. It was all shining, it was Adam and maiden. The sky gathered again, and the sun grew round that very day. And so it must have been after the birth of the simple light, in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stable onto the fields of praise. And honoured among foxes and pheasants by the gay house under the new May clouds, and happy as the heart was long in the sun, borne over and over I ran my heedless ways. My wishes raced through the house-high hay, and nothing I cared at my sky-blue trades, that time allows in all his tuneful turning, so few and such morning songs, before the children green and golden follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days, that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft, by the shadow of my hand in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields, and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh,
Lovely.
fantastic rendition.
I don't know it at all. I've not heard it.
No.
No, I've never heard it before.
No.
I think I'd have to listen to it again a few times, actually, to sort of get all the wrinkles of it.
Yes. Yes, I think so.
But you're right.
Yeah, well, didn't he read it beautifully, though? He read it so beautifully and so intensely.
He did,
intensely, didn't he? So intense.
That Welsh lilt just carries it in such a poetic way anyway.
It's sort of resonating. His voice is sort of really resonating, you know? Sort of,
It's really funny because every now and again, I hear somebody who's Welsh talk about my daughter Rhiannon, and they don't say Rhiannon, they roll the R and they go Rhiannon.
Yes.
It's a slower way of speaking, and it's beautiful, and it's poetic in its own way of just saying her name, Rhiannon.
Rhiannon.
It's just a completely different emphasis on the word.
Yeah.
And I find the Welsh lilt just absolutely gorgeous. It's such a lovely way to speak.
I agree with that. Yeah. I remember.
Why were none of us born Celts, eh? We're all bloody English.
I was.
Oh, were
on
you?
my mother's side.
I've got an Irish passport, remember?
Yeah, you win. No, I'm part Welsh on my mother's side, part Scottish on my father's side. So, unfortunately, though, I do not have an Irish passport, and oh my God, I wish I had.
Yeah, I went on a history.com DNA site, and I think it's for my 60th. The kids bought me a DNA testing kit, which said I was, I think, 98% English.
Oh, that's ridiculously English, Roger.
Ridiculously English. But then, about 6 months, maybe a year later, they sent me an updated DNA, which said that I was about 70% Scottish come Irish.
That's strange.
How
That's a
can
lot of old
you
cobblers,
switch
then, isn't it?
so much from one to the other? It was just bizarre. And I kind of gloried a little bit in this complete Englishness. There wasn't a trace of anything. So I thought maybe I'm like one of the rare English Celts that are still just somehow, a trace of DNA has carried on through.
No Viking in you at all. No
Viking at all. But anyway, now it turns out the latest DNA analysis completely reverses the first one, which makes me desperately suspicious of it. In fact, I should talk to Martin about how much you can trust these history DNA
yes,
sites.
that would be a good idea. You might, you have to allow a lot of time for the reply, though.
Nice work.
Yes. Well, I might not distract him from his more important work at the moment, but
he's going to be away all night, apparently.
Going back a bit to what you were saying, Roger, about that the Welsh. One of my memories is that when I think it was just before we graduated, a whole group of us went, mainly Robert's friends from Warwick University, but I was sort of muscled in on it, went to stay in a North Welsh little cottage somewhere, group of university students. And on the Sunday we went, it was in the middle of nowhere, we went to the local church just because it was the community thing to be done in that sense. And we went there, and it was the smallest little chapel, and small congregation, and the preacher, the whole thing was being conducted in Welsh. And this was in the middle, if you remember, in the early 80s, beginning of the 80s and late 70s, height of Welsh nationalism and all that.
Sons of Glendower.
All that. And halfway through his sermon, the preacher stopped and he said, first in Welsh and then in English, "I understand we have a group of visitors who have come today to our chapel. And in respect to them, I'm going to complete my sermon in English." He then proceeded for the next 10 minutes to finish his sermon, and it was the most heightened sense of politics and philosophy that it came as a complete and utter socialism of the most of the most heightened sense of philosophical thinking. And I was thinking, this is in a small little back beyond nowhere place in the middle of, on a Sunday in a sermon, and he's been saying that in Welsh, He's now, as a matter of respect, and marking a respect to us, completed it in English. And I thought that was just a fantastic touch. And I've had such respect for the Welsh. Just that Welsh, they're an important people, I think.
Yeah, really. And it's like having a pride in themselves, and then once that pride is established and you know they have it,
yes,
at that point they'll then be polite towards you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not until they've made it clear what their kind of position is, and that's so admirable.
Yeah. They also have the best national anthem along with the French.
I don't really know the Welsh national anthem. I love the French.
Oh, really?
I know the French. It's La Marseillaise.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, A Psalm of Life. Does anybody know this one?
No.
Psalm of Life. And the subtitle is What the Heart of the Young Man Said to the Psalmist.
No, I don't know it.
Right. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end of way, but to act that each tomorrow find us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb, driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er a life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labour and to wait.
That's very beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, I do recognise some of it. Just some part, I recognise some of the phrases.
Some of the phrasing, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not heard that poem at all. That is very beautiful.
No.
It's beautifully composed, beautifully put together.
Wonderfully great spirit, isn't it?
Rousing.
Rousing.
I think it must have inspired Bournemouth Council, because their new logo, their strapline for the combined Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole council. It used to be, I can't remember, there's some poxy strapline for the council, but now it's leave nothing but footprints.
Oh, really?
And I thought that was a really lovely little phrase.
Footprints in Time is the famous.
Footprints in the sands of time,
I thought that's, someone's obviously been reading a similar poem or that poem, and that was very beautiful, and that just fits in with what I've seen on the side of Bournemouth Council vans just recently.
Yes.
Well, good old Bournemouth, getting a literary reference.
Fantastic, isn't it? Yes.
Siobhan, did you have another one that you?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't got another one. I mean, I thought of other ones, but I haven't got any of them in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to remember them.
Life is a glorious cycle of song, a medley of extemporanea, and love is a thing that can never go wrong. And I am Marie of Romania.
Okay, very good. Well done.
Yeah, sorry, I just...
William Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, So,
go ahead then.
Obviously,
it's from your despised book.
Obviously,
right. I mean, it is a fantastic song.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Okay.
Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf hath all too short a day. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declined, by chances or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou hast, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Very nice.
Well, you know, that's a note to end on.
Yes, definitely.
You just think, don't you? I mean, I've read that for the best part of 40 years, and I just think, how did he write these sort of poems? I mean, it's so wonderful. Yeah.
Shall we end up with the proper rendition of Chicken Town then?
I think so. I think Nigel chose absolutely perfect poets. He's just the poet of the 20th and 21st centuries to me.
And you're biased.
I mentioned, but
you're biased. Coming from your hometown and all.
Well, mate, yeah.
Your best mate.
Yeah, I'm Bessie.
Lines are ridiculous. Shakespeare and John Cooper Clarke. Chicken Town.
Yes.
There's a funny sort of contradiction or contrast between the two. So this clip comes from a film featuring Christopher Eccleston playing a very odd, isolated figure in Salford, and the rendition of this poem is in a working men's club in Salford, and it's
What's
how
the
the film
film
begins.
called?
Sorry?
What's the film called?
It's called Strumpet. And it's about the film industry and the music industry.
Tie a yellow ribbon. One from Cooper Clarke, the people's poet, though he don't know it. I feel him sitting beside me on the amp, the rat-a-tat-tatting word bullet champ. Evidently Chicken Town. The fucking cops are fucking keen to fucking keep it fucking clean. The fucking chief's a fucking swine who fucking draws the fucking line at fucking fun and fucking games. The fucking kids he fucking blames are nowhere to be fucking found anywhere in Chicken Town. Fucking Chicken Town! The fucking news is fucking bad. The fucking scene is fucking sad. The fucking weed is fucking turf. The fucking speed is fucking surf. The fucking folks are fucking daft. Don't make me fucking laugh. It fucking hurts to look around everywhere in Chicken Town. Everyone's rushing in, not for the proud man apart from the raging moon I write, but for the lovers, their arms around the griefs of ages. The fucking train is fucking late. You fucking wait, you fucking wait. You're fucking lost and fucking found. Stuck in fucking Chicken Town. The fucking view is fucking vile for fucking miles and fucking miles. The fucking babies fucking cry. The fucking flowers fucking die. The fucking food is fucking muck. The fucking drains are fucking fucked. The colour scheme is fucking brown. Everywhere in Chicken Town. Shakes in somehow. William, where are you? Once more onto the breach, William. Sprinkle up thy cream-faced food. Blow you winds, crack your cheeky cheeks, and rage you want to gain rage. The fucking pubs are fucking dull. The fucking clubs are fucking full of fucking girls and fucking guys with fucking murder in their eyes. A fucking bloke got fucking stabbed waiting for a fucking cab. You fucking stay at fucking home, the fucking neighbours fucking moan. Keep your fucking racket down, this is fucking chicken town. The fucking pies are fucking old, the fucking chips are fucking cold, the fucking beer is fucking flat, the fucking flats are fucking rats, the fucking clocks are fucking wrong, the fucking days are fucking long. It fucking gets you fucking down. Evidently, chicken town.
Wow.
That was amazing.
That's very, very tough, isn't it?
Who's performing it? What's the name of the person who, the performer?
Christopher Eccleston.
That's Christopher Eccleston, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen that one before, Nige?
Never. No. I'd like to see
extraordinary,
the film.
I'd like to see the film too. I mean,
The film was great, yeah.
What's the film?
It's called Strumpet.
Strumpet, right.
he must have been pretty young then, wasn't he? He must have been.
I think so, yeah. And
Yeah, because he's not. I mean, he's playing a character, obviously, but he's much sort of mellower now than
Oh,
that
no,
that
not.
character.
no.
Do you think?
When was
No.
that made, that film, Roger? Was it mid-80s?
I think early 90s. I think it was,
Early
because it's
90s.
Mike Lees, I think, who made the film.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? All right.
Yeah. But if you listen to Christopher Eccleston, he is an angry man. He
Yeah, do you
is
think-
angry now. He did this fantastic rendition of the speech at Peterloo a year or two ago in Salford.
Did he?
And he hates the system.
Yeah.
He is just a man. That clip, I think, is much closer to the Christopher Eccleston as he is than you'd
Yeah.
imagine. I follow him on Instagram. He's very interesting. He did a rant about people littering Heaton Park in Manchester not very long ago. And I think he just seethed with anger.
Yeah.
And he did an interview about working class people not being able to get into art schools and getting into drama schools. He just seethed with anger. And I think that clip and that poem just absolutely fits the actor as the man that he is. I think, and it did make me laugh. You said from the sublime to the ridiculous, because the funny thing is that Christopher Eccleston threw in those little bits of Shakespeare.
Yes, that was really good. That was from King Lear, wasn't it?
Yes.
I was about to stop the video thinking, oh, well, he's finished, and then realised that there's still more to come.
Yeah.
It was. He did it brilliantly. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, it was a brilliant.
Didn't you think, Nigel, that the way Christopher Eccleston did it, it started off almost sort of cheerful laughing, and then it just turns into this bitter, angry, almost desolate.
Despairing, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love him.
Fantastic. I downloaded it as an MP3 and I just have it on my mobile. I just play
But
it.
he
every now
delivers
and
it
then.
half the speed of JCC.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the thing, isn't it? If
Well,
you,
you can hear it, can't you? That's
Yeah.
the thing. You can hear it.
yeah,
You can hear the words. Well, I couldn't really hear the words when the John Cooper Clarke was doing it,
Yeah, you got to listen.
but then he did write it.
yeah, that's right. And the truth is, by now, most people that like John Cooper Clarke know all the words anyway. So,
Those guys in the club obviously knew all the words, didn't
oh
they?
yeah, yeah.
I think I really enjoy it. It's great to have
I think it's great fun. I mean, it's just such a nice thing. And, you know, when you can't sort of socialise and go out to the pub or go to the theatre or anything, it's just nice to...
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a really good way of sharing media as well, isn't it? Because
Yeah, it does, yeah.
if you were trying to have this kind of conversation in a pub or around a table, you couldn't share the media without it. You
No, you
do
couldn't,
your own little, you know, mobile phone bubble. But you can do that. You can just put in some media and without distancing yourself from the conversation and staying fully engaged. So I just think it's a really interesting way of using media. I've not tried to use media like this before. I like it.
And then those poems, I also remember those poems now. Don't you think that the poems you've heard?
Oh yes.
You remember them, and they're sort of, just selecting a few like that. It makes them stand out more somehow.
Yeah.
And you remember them in the context of having this, session sort of thing.
It's that context, isn't it, Siobhan? I think that's so right. It gives it a context which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable.
Yes.
No, it's great.
Okay.
The other thing that's nice is that, when you're thinking to do something, you find all sorts of other things, don't you? That you
do.
So it's not just the ones that make the cut. It's all the other ones.
I probably read more poetry today looking for a poem than I've read.
It's really nice.
That's good in itself.
Yeah. All right then. Bye, guys. Bye.
Good night.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Well done. Stay now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.